Today is speaking to inform versus speaking to persuade. It's a very exciting topic, but today is the introduction, meaning as time goes on, in the next webinar, we'll go detailed into speaking to inform, and then the next one, speaking to persuade. So today is just the introduction. You might have questions, but I'm sure they'll get answered in the subsequent webinars. So let's go right into it. There's a phrase from my life coach, Reverend Chris Oyakilome. He says, "What is worth doing is worth training for." Now, why is this topic very important? Speaking to inform versus speaking to persuade. Now, let me give you an idea of what we do at Journal 7. We do public speaking differently. Most public speakers aim their topics or their audience are potential public speakers. That's those who want to do public speaking professionally. But in reality, public speaking is for everyone. And that's why we are focused on not just carrying along the professionals, but we want to break the information as simple as possible for you to apply in your day-to-day life. So this is what distinguishes us from other public speakers. We want to give you something you can work with, how you can use the information in your everyday life, because you take part in public speaking every day. So today is speaking to inform versus speaking to persuade. Now, you see that picture there of a dad talking to his daughter. Now, what do you think? Do you think he got the message across from the facial expression of that child? I'm not so sure. Here is a question I asked, which will be put up as a debate after the webinar. Should a parent-to-child communication be more informative or persuasive? You may not know how best to answer the question, because right now, what you know about informative speaking most likely is probably just your own idea of it. But in this webinar, I'll give you more clarity on it, and then we'll come back to this question. We're going to put it up on our social media accounts, and we would like you to participate and give your opinion. Should a parent-to-child communication be more informative or persuasive? Now, one of the things I found very interesting was in Africa and in Europe, comparing these two continents, they are complete opposite. So I discovered that in Africa, parent-to-child communication is more persuasive, while in Europe, parent-to-child communication is more informative. Then switch, child-to-parent communication in Africa is more informative, while in Europe is more persuasive. Now, as we're going into more details, you get to understand what that means. So why is this topic very important? It will help you become a better spouse. So you can see the picture here of a couple pointing fingers at themselves. This is public speaking. This is either informative or persuasive. Every communication falls under either of these two. So if you know how to communicate better, if you know how to deliver your informative or persuasive speech better, you become a better spouse. If you're not married now, you're a potential husband or potential wife. You become a better parent. So that's why this is important for every parent, every child, every husband, every wife. Think about this. You've been in a lecture hall where you had to listen to a boring lecture. You can see, so there's someone sleeping here, people are doing other things. This is a lecturer delivering information, and this information is informative speech. But I'm trying to show you different instances where you have come across either of the two. Now, at the end, I want to let you know, I'll give you a very interesting information. Another scenario here is a boss to the staff or to the employee. There's a question here, should a boss to employee communication be more informative or persuasive? So you need this. You will be a boss, or you're a boss already, or you're an employee of someone or some organization. You need to know how to deliver your informative or persuasive speech. The best one to use in every situation So you need this webinar. Politicians want to inform or persuade you? It's a question. At the end of the webinar, you would know what the answer is. When politicians speak, are they on the persuasive end or informative? How about motivational speakers? Land your dream job. During interviews, you have to answer your question. When do you switch to informative or persuasive? What do you say when asked a question? Maybe the job opportunity you lost was because you didn't have the right approach to communicate your thoughts or even what you had done. Take an example, you have your CV. Most people make mistakes with their CVs because they write what they can do. They write what they can do, not what they achieved. When employers are looking at your CV, what they want to see is what you have achieved. But most people have achieved a lot, but do not know how to communicate it. Informative speaking, persuasive speaking, how do you amplify the salient points? How do you make them obvious? How about delivering a memorable presentation the next time? Every one of us has been in this position before where you had to present something, either to your class, to your friends, a project. How well did you do? Maybe you would have done better if you knew more about informative speaking or persuasive. How to get your boss to listen to you. Sometimes you have a very difficult boss, but how do you communicate? When do you use either of the approaches? How about getting an applause for your next business presentation? From the faces of the crowd here, you can tell that this was obviously a great presentation. And I'm sure you're going to do that after this webinar. Make that sale today. When you are an entrepreneur, you're starting up something, you need to communicate what you're selling. You need to convince someone to buy. You need to convert people. What do you say to them? How do you say it? You have competitors. How do they choose you over somebody else? So let's go right into it. Definition of informative speaking. Now remember, today is introduction. So I'm not going to touch on some things in details, but in our next webinar, we're going to go into details on informative speaking. What is informative speech or informative speaking? It can be defined as one that increases audience knowledge about some subject, one that helps the audience learn more about an issue or an idea. I want you to get the focus of informative speaking is to increase knowledge about something. It doesn't focus on if you do it or not. The focus is not getting you to do something with the information you're receiving. The focus is on you getting the information. So it tends to give you or increase your knowledge about what you already know or give you some new knowledge. 4 main purposes of informative speaking. Now, I want to assume that you're writing down, you're taking down notes. If not, it's not too late. You can get your pen and take down your notes to remember the key points from today's webinar. So 4 main purposes of informative speaking. The first one is to create a desire for information. Take an example. You're married to someone. It's not enough to say what you want to say. Oh, I told him he didn't do it, or I told her she didn't do it. I told my colleague and he didn't pay any attention. The first thing in informative speaking, the first purpose is to create a desire for information. When you're communicating to someone who is not interested in what you're saying, that's not informative speaking because you do not get across the information. So the first thing is to create a desire for information. And I'll tell you how to do it in this webinar. The second one is help the audience understand. Someone said, I don't care if you understand or not. I've said it the way I want to say it, the way I understand it. No, it's not about your understanding. It's about their understanding. So what you have said, before you communicate, you have to think, will this be understood if I say it this way? Then that lets you know if to change your approach. My audience, how much do they know about what I want to say? Again, when I use audience, don't think too far as only professional setting. Think about even at home and at work, at school. The next one is help the audience to remember. So you want to create a desire for the information. Secondly, you want to help the audience to understand the information. Thirdly, you want to help them remember what you said. And the fourth one is to invite the audience to apply information. Now, taking of the word invite, not to make them do it, but you provide a platform so that they are able to apply if they want to. All right. Now, the first one, how does a person create a desire for information in speech? So I'm communicating to you. How do I make you want to hear or listen to what I have to say? I wrote two examples for you here. The first one, look at this. A student says, my speech today is on the subject of hydroponics. The class looked slightly mystified. I'm sure some of you probably are looking mystified right now. What's hydroponics? Now, the student continues. How many of you know what hydroponics is? 2 students out of 22 raise their hands. Then he says, I see that only a few of you know what hydroponics is. Our technology is ahead of our ability to absorb it. Educated people should know what it is. Today, you will find out. Think about that great start, that great beginning. He gets your attention. And he says, educated people should know what it is. Now you're thinking, I'm educated. I don't know what it is. So I need to listen to know what hydroponics is. That's creating the desire for information. The second example, a different presenter opens this way. Do you know what your chances are of getting skin cancer? Do you know when you're likely to get it? Do you know if anything can be done to cure it? These are questions. So at the first part of the slide here, you can see you can begin with a question, with a comment, an opinion, something to grab their attention. This will create a desire for information. So imagine you want to talk to your child. You want to give your child an information about something. Like I said, this can be applied in professional settings and even informal settings. And you want to get your child to listen to an information. And then you get his attention. Say, do you know why Teletubbies are like this? Do you know why apples are green? And he's thinking, no, Mom. Then you get his attention. All right. The questions arouse the audience's curiosity about the answers, which were given later in the speech. So create a desire for the information to be heard. The second point in informative speaking is, I said, to encourage them, help them to what? To understand the information, to understand the topic. How do you do that? The first one is make very clear your main ideas. So I want to talk to you about how to grow your hair in winter. Very clear, the idea is very clear. State it. Then here I said, let your speech be limited to within 2 to 5 points. Now in the next webinar, I'm going to give you the structure of informative speaking. And I'm going to show you examples and teach you how to apply them. You're going to love the next webinar. Don't miss it for anything. So second one, how do you help the audience to understand? Besides stating what you want to communicate, the main ideas, the second one is use simple words. People understand simple words. Don't use big words, ambiguous words. Use simple. In fact, what makes you an effective speaker is when you are able to use the simplest words to communicate the most complex ideas. So use simple words to communicate complex words and abstract ideas. I'm going to give you an example in persuasive speaking because there are some similarities between informative and persuasive speaking. Next, the next idea is you want to help the audience to remember what you said. Remember, the first one is creating a desire to hear you, to listen to the information. Second is to understand it. Third, now to remember it. How can you get them to retain important information? They don't have to remember all you said, but they have to remember the most important ones. How do you do that? The first one is by stating it. Now you see on the slide, I wrote, I want you to remember the main causes of World War I, the terms of amnesty, and the immediate results of those terms. So you're letting them know, I want you to remember this. So it gets somewhere in their mind. Oh, okay, that means that's important. Second, look at an example here of a speaker. He says, after this speech, I will ask several of you to tell me 2 of the many causes of blindness that I will discuss in my speech. He said, I will ask you what I discuss with you. So now they want to listen. You can even say, I'm going to call up 2 people from the audience to tell me 3 points that I mentioned. And they are listening because now you're saying, I will call you. I'm going to call you to give account of what you heard. Remember, this can be applied even in your home. Next, audiences tend to remember more about an informative speech if the speaker tells them specifically at the outset what they should remember from the speech. So take an example. A speaker says, you will want to remember this point. Or he says, my second main point is, or the critical thing to remember in doing this is. So you lay emphasis on what they should remember. The final point, other methods that encourage an audience to retain information is by repeating the main ideas 2 or 3 times during the speech and pausing. Make some gestures to help them remember. Give some examples, some illustration, show a video, tell a story. You want to help your audience retain the information. I mean, unfortunately, many speakers don't know this, or they don't do this. So you have boring academic lectures, you have boring business seminars, but that's why you're having this information in this webinar. Then the final one I said is the final purpose of informative speaking is what? Inviting the audience to apply the information. So I wrote for you here, an effective speaker determines the methods of encouraging the audience to use information quickly. So when you give the information, invite them to apply it as quick as possible. Take an example. A student invited everyone to try one dance step to music because he spoke about one dance step. And after the presentation, he invited them to try it, the audience to try to do the dance. Now, why is that important? Because people tend to remember longer what they applied immediately. So try to conclude by inviting them to apply. Now, I'm going to tell you why it's different from persuasive speaking, but that'll be a bit later. Now let's talk about the 4 types of informative speeches. Now I'll just mention them. In the next webinar, I'm going to go into details. I use the mnemonic OPEC. Now, if you are from Africa, OPEC is a popular mnemonic for Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So, but in this case, is objects, processes, events, and concepts. These are the 4 types of informative speeches. And there are different designs for informative speeches: topical design, spatial design, chronological design, which I will talk about in the next webinar. But just thought to mention them for you to at least know them. This is the introduction. Now, persuasive speaking, let's define it. The primary aim of the speaker in persuasive speaking is to influence the behavior or the thinking of the listeners. Here I wrote for you that the most distinctive aspect of the persuasive speech is the conscious intent of the speaker to effect a change in the listener. And every decision about the speech is made with that end in view. The choice of subject for a given audience, approach to the subject, whether head-on or more gradual, the choice of arguments and proof, selection of language, organization, and style of delivery. All these are chosen with the singular intent of changing the mind or the behavior of the audience. So it's not about giving just information, but causing you, I want you to think and do what I think about this particular subject. I want to influence you. But in both speeches, which I'm going to talk about very, very quickly, very soon, in both speeches, it's not about sharing just your ideas from the top of my head. No. In informative and persuasive speaking, you have to use supporting materials. That means some research work, some data, some quotations, some statistics that back up what you are saying. So it's not enough to say, I think it should be done like this. No, why? On the basis of this. Okay, so designs of persuasive speaking. We have problem solution design. Think about it. Politicians, they want to show you the problems that you're going through right now and how they will solve it. That's persuasive speaking. They show you the problem and then they appeal to you with the solution. I will do this and we will do this in 4 years. This and this will be done. Even motivational speakers do the same thing. They want you to change a particular behavior and they show you all the things going on in your life, all the wrong things that need to be fixed, and then they show you how you can fix them. The next design is causal effect. Same thing. I'm going to talk about that again in detail probably next 2 webinars. That'll be for persuasive speaking. Now, in this type of speaking, you have unacceptable emotional appeals. So there are boundaries professionally that let you know if this is still within the ethics of persuasive speaking or is outside it. Pity, the first one is pity, flattery, provocation. I'm not going to go into details now. When we are dealing with this particular speech in detail, I'll tell you more. But deception, when you use distraction, prejudice, manipulation in your speech, coercion, bribery, all these are unacceptable emotional appeals in persuasive speaking. But there are acceptable ones. Now, if you notice, I used the black background for the unacceptable emotional appeals, and then use these friendly colors for the acceptable emotional appeals in public speaking. Idealism, transcendence. When I communicate to you and I give you the idea of where you can be with this information, if you act on it, you're thinking, I want to be there. So you are moved to act on it. Justified fear is not fear from manipulation, but it's fear from evidence, in quotes. Determination, conviction, dramatic examples. Now, let me give an example of this type of speech. There have been 11 accidents. Someone is speaking now, it's a meeting, and he's trying to make them to do something. So he says, there have been 11 accidents in the past year at the sharp curve, which is 2 miles north of Cherokee Lake of Route 857. Installation of guardrails, warning signs, and a flashing light will cost approximately $34,000 US. Even though we have not balanced the budget this year, I feel that we should appropriate money for this project. Thank you. That sounds nice. But look at this next example. So this is actually informative speaking. So he tells you and says, I think we should, but look at persuasive speaking. On July 18 this year, John Cochran was found dead. Now this is the same story. John Cochran was found dead. Found dead. Someone died. The radio of his car was still playing when the paramedics got to his overturned vehicle. John's neck was broken. You see the description. He was snapped when his car flipped over an embankment. No one here knows John Cochran because he did not live here, but he died in our neighborhood. Most of you know of the hairpin turn on Route 857 that has been the scene of 11 accidents this year alone, and has injured many friends as well as strangers. We need money to put up guardrails. You see, he calls to action. We need money to put up guardrails, signs, and a flashlight. I know money is tight, but I hope you fit to find the funds to remedy this situation before the unknown John Cochran becomes one of your loved ones. Think about it. So he gives you a serious thought, and you're going home thinking, before the unknown John Cochran becomes one of your loved ones, I'm going to bring out money to fix this. That's persuasive speaking. So we are rounding off now. Similarities between both of them, they have a similar structure. They both have introduction, body, and conclusion. Think about if you were an effective speaker and every time you spoke, either persuasive or informative, you communicated correctly, you're going to get so much result than what you're getting right now. Think about it. In every communication, you go to the market, you want to buy something, you go to the store, you want to negotiate a deal, you just know what to say because you know the principle, the theories behind these communication strategies. Now, again, similarity, both of them make use of information, data, and supporting materials. So both of them use information, but the purpose, the end goal is different. One aims to just expound your knowledge about the subject. The second one aims to call you to make a change or change your behavior about that particular subject. The differences: the first one, the speaker's intent. For informative speaking, the intention is to increase knowledge, while for persuasive, to change the mind or action. Change your mind about that thing. Purpose of the message. In informative, to define, to describe the process, or for example, how to cook fried rice in 30 minutes, something like that. And the first thing is you boil your rice. The next one is you do this step by step. So to describe, to explain, to compare, clarify, and to promote understanding. While in persuasive is to shape, to reinforce, and change the audience responses. The next one, the listener's effect. In informative, the idea is for you to know more than before, to advance what is already known. So either you knew it before, we're giving you more knowledge, or you had no idea, we're giving you information. While in persuasive, we want you to feel or think differently about it, or behave differently than the way you behaved before that particular presentation. The final one is audience choice. In informative speaking, it allows you to willingly learn new knowledge, while in persuasive, to change behavior without question. In conclusion, this is very important. No speech is completely informative. Again, in conclusion, no speech is completely informative or persuasive. But the chart I gave you in the previous slide helped you know the differences. But in general, no speech is completely informative or completely persuasive. But one can be more persuasive than the other or more informative than the other one. So it's about the degree of the informative part of it or the degree of the persuasive part of that speech. So no speech is completely persuasive or informative.